Hey everybody, I'm David Magone. This is part 4 of the Sliding Up the Mountain tutorial, originally inspired by Dan Steele. In part 1, I showed you how you can work on sliding from the full lotus posture up to a tripod headstand. Part 2 focused on showing you how to transfer from the tripod headstand into urdhva kukkutasana, the upward facing rooster pose. Part 3, I just basically posted an old video that I had done of how to transition from the crow posture upwards to a handstand, from the handstand back to the crow, which in and of itself is substantially easier than actually pressing from the full lotus posture. Now this final part, part 4, is going to focus in on how to link everything together. Now, when you're doing this, first you might want to basically practice with a spotter. Balance can be a little sketchy, so you can essentially have them stand with their feet hips width apart, just in front of your shoulders, and then they can basically grab onto your hips and help pull you up into the final position. If you prefer to practice on your own, then there's a couple tips you can follow. First and foremost is that the balance is a little tough with this one, and your fingers are sort of your stabilizers. So every time you start to feel as though you're going to tip forward, play the piano with your fingers. Sort of claw them into the floor really hard, and that will oftentimes prevent you from tipping over or ahead. Now, if you start to lose the balance and digging the fingers into the floor doesn't solve the problem, you can step one hand forward really quickly, and that oftentimes will kick your body's weight back. You should know if you do that, though, you'll definitely land with a thump on the floor. Second fundamental is your gaze. If you look down too far, and specifically back between your legs, while it's possible to press to a handstand, it makes it feel like you're going to do a somersault. So when you're learning this, look forward as much as you can. Third fundamental is abdominal engagement. Most oftentimes when hiking or pressing into a handstand, I like to use my back extensors by curling my tailbone up in the air. With this one, it's a little bit different. That takes the legs too far away from the body, and their weight basically topples you to the floor. So in this one, I essentially hollow by belly crunching down to the front. That draws the knees a little closer to the center, and it makes it just a little bit easier to get the knees above the center line. Now the final point depends on whether or not you have faith, but if so, you might want to pray to God or whatever God you believe in before you do this posture, because the transition can be a little challenging and it's always good to have some additional assistance. So to put it all together, you have to get to the full lotus posture. So you can strap yourself up into that in any way that you typically do. When pressing to the handstand from here, it's good for your lotus to be fairly loose. If your knees are really close together, sometimes their tightness prevents you from basically getting the legs closer to the vertical at the top. So slide your ankles apart and let your knees be a little wider than the hips. Now from there, you start on your kneecaps. So you plant your hands on the floor approximately shoulder distance apart. From there, you slide forward to your wrists. You press down crazy hard. As you press, you essentially keep driving down until your knees stack above the shoulders, and at that point there, you press your feet all the way up to the ceiling and you hold. Now after a few breaths, to reverse the process, you essentially dig your fingers into the floor. Looking forward, as I mentioned before, you draw your knees toward the backs of the arms. You can keep them straight or you can bend the elbows. And then to finish out the entire thing, you can slide back down the mountain to have a seat on the floor. So that's a tricky move. You know, it's one of those things that's very tiring, so you might need to space this out over the course of the day. You can try a couple times, and then if you get exhausted, you know, maybe take a couple hours break before you come at it again. And then after a little while, once your body's had time to rest and recuperate, give it a shot again. And then after a little while, you make some progress with it. So let me know how it goes. Hit me up if you have any questions, and I hope you have fun. Catch you later.